Welcome to the Reverberations podcast, where we explore the human experience and the journey of self-discovery. Thank you for joining another edition of Reverberations. This is John Stuart. I've got guest Deb Stanley with us today. It is truly an honor, as always, to share guests who light up this human experience with the gifts that they offer and are of service to humanity. And Deb's is such a steward of support for the divine feminine, a steward for womb activation. Deb's is a quantum feminine embodiment guide, a womb medicine woman, and a spirit keeper of the sacred feminine who helps heart-centered women embody their wild feminine essence. All that said, the most beautiful thing about Deb's is her heart and how she leads and her acts of service. And Deb's, it's been a long time coming for us to have this conversation, for us to be here in this moment, in this time. We're recording this just before 11/11. So we've got some powerful energies that are here that have been supporting us since we've connected over the past couple of months, which we're going to get into how we came into connection and what the amplification of that connection has been and where we're growing and where you're growing with your practice. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a backstory. So several months back, Debs and I were connected through a mutual friend, Katie Felton, whom you have heard her name several times on this podcast, and we will be having Katie on here in the future. So definitely keep your eyes and ears peeled for that episode, as that will definitely be one to tune in with. Katie had placed us together for some work around sound healing, sound alchemy, to bring about the Queen Code, to bring about the sacred healing from the womb. And when Katie had introduced us, there was, for me, this automatic resonance to say yes to what Debs is bringing light to and is of service to this world, because it's where we are going, is to empower the divine feminine to step in and be a leader of their own life and to be the embodiment of that power, of that grace, of that radiance, to share, to be able to light this world up in the new paradigm of love that we know that is being ushered in as we speak. And when I was asked to participate in the bringing forth of the Queen Code through her work with Vaishnavi, who was in the last podcast. And if you haven't listened to that one, after you listen to this one, go back and definitely tune in with Vaishnavi's, because there is so much medicine within that as well. So Debs, I'm going to turn this over to you and just share with us what you're of service to, what you are carrying forth, what the torch is that you're carrying into this world, and what's been moving through you in this time and space. And thank you for being here. It's truly, truly an honor to finally have this conversation.
Yeah, feels really beautiful. Thank you, John. Thank you. So, yeah, what am I of service to? I feel like really, in essence, it's about a coming home to self, coming home to love, and the journey of that, the Anana descent, the Selkie tale of losing yourself in the labyrinth, all of that. And essentially, I guess, holding this, torch that it might be a little flicker of light, it might be a strong glow, but this sense that if you were really pushed into a corner and asked, why are you here? there would be an answer that was around something to do with, I came back to help raise the vibration of the planet. You know, on like some soul level, there's I came here to be of service to this unfolding, this evolution of what's needed right here, right now, in this experimental, you know, soup that we find ourselves in, this 3D dimension on Earth. And for me, that kind of, you know, that light beacon was very strong through my Saturn return. It kind of really, something really lit up in my life. I found a Buddhist practice. I had this big Kundalini awakening. I was like up all night, like, you know, writing it all out, and just really like on fire, on absolute freaking fire. And then that sort of tempered a little bit. But I think really my quest was all about, you know, finding it, I guess, in an external, from an external source, maybe. At that point, you know, I'd grown up with those patriarchal religions. I'd been in a convent, you know, I'd had all that sort of soup of sort of, you know, shame about, you know, your body, the feminine, all of that stuff. And really I was looking for it in yoga, in healing, in crystals, in angels, all that kind of very top 3 chakra orientated. And I was dancing around the globe, you know, traveling around, you know, carefree. And a big part of me really wasn't embodied and rooted and grounded. I'm a Taurus, so I am actually an earth sign, but it was like she was not there. There was a part of me that needed to be in that body so that I could fly my own kite and be free, but I wasn't. I was really kind of just off with the fairies, as it were. And I think through my journey of that quest, you know, to find wholeness within, to be happy, to be fulfilled, to feel wealth in all areas of my life. And it's an ongoing journey, but really that I guess I felt guided. I traveled, lived in South America. I got my shamanic roots. I set up a retreat there. I did some really deep dives, and then came back to the UK and ended up living in this wood with this guy who I'd fallen in love with, and we had kids together, and I literally gave birth to them living in a yurt, you know, chopping the wood and breastfeeding them while chopping the wood and all of that stuff. And we lived there, and the kids grew up there for the first part of their lives. And I think the initiation of motherhood and the initiation of, rather than, you know, the Buddhist practice or the crystals or, you know, all this external stuff, I guess, which obviously had its big, you know, resonance with what my inner world, but really I just started attuning to nature is my temple, is my goddess, and the seasons, and really weaving my way through the seasons, and these incredible sort of alchemical, you know, distillations, I think, of deep knowing and understanding that kind of came through that life for myself as a woman living in this quite sort of, you know, harsh, I guess, barren of the feminine. Even though it was nature, it was like a wood that had been planted up in the paper mill industry for like doing, and, you know, my partner was ex-army, and it just had that sort of feel. And I knew in my body that I was there to bring this fluff and curve and music, and to bring the children and the heart energy and the magic, you know. And I guess I realized on that journey that my sacred contract with that land and that relationship was about restoring the Shiva Shakti imbalance. So to bring that feminine light, even though I didn't really understand what that feminine essence was at the time. And there was a big part of me that was, I guess, journeying through the tendency to be in yang, summer, spring, ovulation in terms of the menstrual cycle, you know, full moon energy of always on and fun and light and doing and active and filling my days. And I was terrified of the darkness, the stillness, the silence, the listening, the inner world, the deep dive, I guess down into the muddy roots. It was like, no, let's just do the light thing. And I think really that journey sort of spat me out via a 4-year training around womb awakening, an apprenticeship, and it culminated in a teacher training and big initiation with Mama Pele out in Hawaii. And the message I got from Pele was, you are here to, rather than it being this kind of, I guess, this big, I'm here to help raise the vibration of the planet, and that was enough for me, and it still is if I go back to that. But it was more specific than that. It was this very clear, I'd done my sort of deep dive, I tended to my own grief and aloneness and barrenness of this feminine rose garden, that hadn't been in place. I'd started to see the blooming of this rose garden, this goddess energy. We brought this goddess temple to the woods, and women were coming, and there was this deep activation around the goddess and around me, and everything kind of got enshactified. And then Pele, we were in this yoni cave. This Hawaiian elder had taken us on this beautiful journey to this yoni cave, and I was getting all these incredible, messages from nature and things, which I later kind of was able to understand. But the message was that I was here to bring the light of the feminine, the light of the divine feminine, into my heart, and the fire of the divine feminine into my womb. And really, that, I feel, even though it's taken maybe 5-6 years since then to really harness and understand the full spectrum of that, it wasn't about my heart, my womb. It was about my embodiment, and therefore my activation codes, to be able to share that with women. And I really feel, I guess, John, that if women can go there with their own Inanna descent and lose those parts of themselves that are all conditioned by that sort of patriarchal soup, and the limiting beliefs and the survival patterns and all that stuff that we have held together in order to keep us safe, in order to keep the feminine mysteries safe, in order to keep our magic safe, because it hasn't felt safe to be here on the earth. I feel that when women can do that journey and be held by women who've done that journey before them, then they can access their womb wealth. And by that, I mean their womb wealth in terms of their relationship to their womb power, their womb wisdom, their relationship to their body, their relationship to their sexuality, their relationship to others, their wealth in terms of their money, their gold, what they are in service to, their sacred vocation, their sacred leadership, all things really, this incredible wealth that when women invest in themselves and get activated and clear out the blocked energy that I work with around specifically about these 9 portals within the womb, clearing those so that they can be fully activated, so that the energy can just flow there. And I guess ultimately it's about healing. What I'm in service to is bringing this light of the feminine and the fire of the feminine, and healing this for myself, or having healed this, or on the path of healing this for myself, being able to hold a space where women's self-healing ability comes online, and they can quantum shift, embody, root down, and become these like liquid crystals to be able to bring in more light onto the planet. Because it's like Gaia can't ascend without us helping to activate this. And I guess for many people, the light will only come up to here. It's like it stops just below their heart chakra. And actually this feminine dimension piece really allows us to bring back her and this beautiful activation of earth connection, and really understanding ourselves to be a daughter, a son, a child of earth. And I think at the root of all of this really is this massive split, this, eros split, this soul split that we can experience and run a mile from. But ultimately that will shape itself in whichever way, as an abandonment wound, as some form of trauma. And then to heal that, when you heal that, for me, it was, I guess, around really like a witch wound, ultimately, of like, it's not safe to be in your magic, Debs. And then to heal that and activate that, and then hold a frequency so that other women can come into resonance with that and remember themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is my corner of magic that I'm holding the threads of, and truly, truly believe and can see that, one woman lifting up her little thread of the tapestry, the whole tapestry lifts. And that's for her tribe, her children, her ancestors. It's like there is such a massive shift that we can facilitate when we do that inner work, and we bring back the gold.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, what I'm in service to.
Thank you so much for sharing. There's so much to tap into there. So I'm going to do my best navigating what you just shared so we can expand on a lot of it, and we'll go one at a time. So going back to one of the things that you shared, which I think really set the tone for a lot of my inner work, and what I feel is at the crux and the heart of it all, is coming home to self and coming home to love. Mm-hmm. When you shared that resonated so deeply in my heart, because when we remember who we are and we tune in with ourself, you spoke to that looking for it in external sources. That was one of the big things that I found for myself, was that I was externalizing my experience of trying to find the answers everywhere else, rather than slowing down, listening, feeling, and then initiating action based upon the messages that came forward. I felt you when you said, I wasn't grounded in it. Because when we're externalizing our experience, it's like everything about us is being placed. It's like we've got a handful of marbles, which is let's say it's our source energy. Mm-hmm. And we're taking the marble and we're putting it in one bucket, and then in another bucket, and then in another bucket. And then we look at our hand, and then we're outsourced, right? Everything is out there. So how do we resource? And resourcing, I feel you spoke to so beautifully, is the connection to the land. When you said that you had a sacred contract with the land of that Shiva Shakti energy, the harmony, restoring the harmony within and throughout. The only way that I feel that we can restore harmony is first restore it within here. Remember that we are that, not that we have to go out to that and draw that here. It's remembering we are all that is, and how powerful that is. And you spoke to being always on. When we're externalizing the experience, I know, like for me, it's so incredibly overwhelming. It's like I'm putting so much energy out there, and the energy that it takes to revitalize is quite a bit. It can literally shut down for days or even longer to, especially in the past. Now I'm fairly good at resourcing myself and getting myself right back on because I'm aware of it, but it takes a lot of practice. And you spoke to one thing that I feel, or you spoke to a lot, though this one thing speaks directly to it, is so many are terrified of the deep dive. Like you spoke to, I was terrified of the deep dive and all this love and light, and that's great. What about the deeper layers that we have to tap into? Because again, love and light, I don't want to discount it. At the same time, we're placing our marbles outside of ourselves, projecting love and light rather than embodying what it is that we know to be true and filling in the gaps that we have within, and recognizing that by not being afraid to tap in to those crevices and being like, you know what? I see you, self. I see that version of myself that I don't necessarily want to see. And I'm not just going to sit there and patch it up, put a Band-Aid on it, pretend that it's not there, dress it up, do whatever I have to do, or show up in some costume outside and pretend to be this version of myself that I know isn't true. So let's face these aspects of myself and say, you know what? There's some work that I have to do there. If I really want to be the living evidence of what I know to be true, or experience this world that I desire, a more sustainable and harmonious co-creative experience, that's an inside job. It was like we talked about in the last podcast with Vaishnavi, was paradise is an inside job. You know, we're looking for it everywhere else, but the journey of self-discovery leads us. It might be shitty for a while, you know, it might not be easy, but it darn sure will be worth every bit that we give to ourselves, because then that Eden, that garden, that just begins, you're speaking to that blooming. And I love that. I love that so much, especially when you're, you know, giving the Pele references of bringing the, you know, the light of the feminine into my heart, the fire of the divine feminine into my womb. Responsibility, accountability of being the living evidence of what I know to be true, so that I can be of service to that. So there's a few questions that I have on there, because there was so much rich expression that you brought about with your journey. I want to go back to the one thing that you spoke of, was that womb awakening. When you spoke to the womb awakening, how did that come about? What did that feel like? What was going on? If you could take us back to that. You know, you're going through this, okay, I'm going in for the deep dive. I'm tired of looking out there. I want to restore harmony. What's going on in Deb's world that brings about this remembering and this awakening, and the next steps we'll go into after that?
Okay. So the womb awakening, you mean when I was doing this apprenticeship?
Yeah, what led to the apprenticeship? Yeah, what led to that?
It was an apprenticeship held by Saren and Azra Bertrand, and they wrote the book Womb Awakening, and also another book, Magdalene Mysteries. And Saren was a friend of mine who used to come and visit me in the woods and sort of stay in one of the little hairy log cabins, you know, grass roof log cabins. And then she and Azra came just before their wedding, and, you know, kind of got to know him a bit more. And then they started doing this stuff, and she was like, oh, Debs, you know, just come and join. And I was like, you know, I didn't have an endometriosis, a big baby loss story. I didn't have any big thing with my womb. I'd had really like meh cycles and, you know, easy pregnancies and amazing births. So it wasn't like, yeah, I've got to do some healing there. It wasn't an obvious go-to for me. And I joined just because she said, you know, come for the ride kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And I couldn't get to a lot of the practices, actually, because we were living off grid. Our Wi-Fi was really ropey. I mean, I was up to my armpits in tiny children, and, you know, just the basics of getting through the day to make sure that you've got enough wood that's going to heat the thing, that's going to, you know, give you some warmth and cook on and heat the water that you're going to shower in. I mean, it's, you know, it's a very different rhythm. But I loved the journey of it. And essentially, I don't think there was any one point. It was like this, I think womb doesn't really work like that. She works in a very spiral, cyclical, labyrinth way. And on some levels, some of the activations that I got was like being in the freaking boil wash, you know, and you were like, you come out afterwards like, what just happened? But I feel like whatever we would go through, it was a 9-moon journey. So it was 9 months. It was like you got the transmission of it because of your sacred yes. You'd said yes, and you showed up. You didn't get to do all the things, and there weren't lives in those days. It was pre-Zoom days and things. we used to have the odd calls and things, but there was just something, I think, that I kept going back for more. I kept repeating it. We all did, really, but it was, I felt like the essence of it was sitting in a glass jar laughing at me. It was like I hadn't grasped it, and yet it was undoing me from the inside. And all that spiritual bypassing, John, that I was doing, of like, when you have those red flags and it's like, oh, I'll just send it some light and love, and I'll heal it, and I'll do that thing, and it's like, oh my God, and you're abandoning yourself.
Yeah.
It really started to highlight those, but the activation was just this deeply enshaktied, I think is the only really accurate expression that I can give to it. Like from my healing, I worked as a massage therapist in the year, I'd have, clients, we built this goddess temple, everything from the yoga, the red tents, everything just got its own flavor. And it was my flavor, as well as what I was kind of assimilating from, this 4-year container of being in this apprenticeship of womb awakening. And I feel that when you were speaking earlier about this light and dark, or this yang and yin, it's this eternal sort of polarity, duality dance of contraction, expansion. And I'd always found myself more comfortable in that expansion, yang, full moon, summer vibe. And so I think, because I was doing this womb awakening journey whilst living in the woods, and normally the Debs that would be like out of here. Every time it started to get colder, I'd be like booking that flight, off I'd go, either working, studying, whatever. I'd be off, India, Canada, South Africa, wherever, and 3 winters in Argentina. But really, I was starting to be able to attune to that seasonal shift of nature's slow rhythm. And that was nourishing in itself, to be able to be with myself in those darker months, and when it wasn't all barefoot and, swimming in the lake kind of thing. And I feel that really, and at that stage, I guess, just before the womb awakening, I hadn't really sort of gone into the cycles, and that the womb awakening wasn't so much about the cycles. And Sarah, and we talk about it now, and she's like, Debs, you always loved the cycles. It was like, you always, that was your thing. And I think living through the cycles of the season in that way, there was like this deep, deep apprenticeship that I was doing, not just with the womb awakening container, but with Mother Nature. And so in a way, this blueprint maps onto the menstrual cycle. So you have your yang stage of ovulation, and then your yin stage of menstruation. And we get that blueprint from the lunar cycle. We have that same blueprint on the earth cycle. And then we also sort of journey through, this constellation in our journey through life. And for me, through womanhood. So maiden, mother, queen, crone, from the yang of the maiden years, the mothering years, to the more yin of the queen, and in the future, the crone years. And I feel like to harness the medicine of those has been just such gold, actually, John, to be able to have that microcosm of, this is my menstrual cycle, and I've been so avoiding stopping when I come to my moon time and resting. I'm pushing on through. I can do it. I'll do all the things. Yes, and just never listening to my body. And that's how I'd spent my life, to kind of come to the point where I was able to free bleed and just deeply honor that, albeit that it was almost too late, because I was going through perimenopause. So I never quite knew when she was visiting. But that sort of very shamanic journey that a woman can do, harnessing those energies of her inner winter, her inner spring, her inner summer, her inner autumn, really preparing her for that phenomenal grand initiation of menopause. And I feel like the womb awakening journey was really just priming me for that initiation. And for, instead of bleeding this sacred menstrual blood, you know, I would offer it to the earth and do all this sort of beautiful prayers and offerings every month. But instead of offering that externally, it was like I was holding my gold inside, and I was able to then, really birth something from that place that felt like it had been in the cauldron for a long time. I talk about myself as a late bloomer, you know, late to motherhood. I started my menarche, my first period, you know, it was like, it's nearly 16. I was always a late bloomer. And then I had this early menopause, but actually, in a way, this gold that I feel that I'm sharing with the world through my work and through the women and witnessing their activations and their, you know, transformation. It's like that has been in the cauldron for a long time, tempering and, you know, just getting the right sort of, the right ingredients to be able to birth. So that, that feels like just lovely.
Yeah.
Having spent a lot of my life, you know, as you were saying, like, is it there? Is it there? Looking outside of myself. And it's like, I can sit here as queen. And this is where we came to, you know, really connect, was in this, you know, to be able to sit in your queen, to be able to sit in your king energy and not need to externalize and not need to search for it out there, but to actually really feel that sovereignty, to know who you are, to feel that inner confidence, that alignment, and to feel your magnetism in that, and not needing, you know, that external validation that you used to need, and the ego and all that stuff that went with it. And I guess the arrogance, like, I'll save the world. It's like, you know, I'll save myself actually. And then maybe I've got something, you know, that's going to anchor in. But it's essentially all of that. And for me, the deeper, wider prayer of that is, why did I come back to earth at this time? And any of the healing that I have journeyed through and brought home to myself, for my lineage, for my children, future grandchildren, all of that, that's really what lights me up, is knowing that through the embodiment of these light codes, you know, these incredible light codes that can then, because we clear the mess, the trauma, the ancient sink that keeps filling up of ancestral stuff, you know, because we clear that, we just become these vessels that the light can just find us, stream through us way more efficiently, I guess, and be received, almost drunk up by the earth grids of Gaia, to be able to form these templates. And once that earth grid is really solid and really charged up with light, then we are living the new earth paradigm.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Such incredibly rich and vibrant expression of the divine feminine and the power that can, or that does, come alive when we tune in to our own biofield, our own mechanisms, our own patterns and cycles. And in particular with women, and I want to touch upon this because I want to learn more from the masculine perspective. And also, I want to be able to provide information for the masculine energetic that is out there that wants to learn more about this, so that they can hold the feminine energy with greater care, with greater sacred reciprocity, with the awareness of what the feminine is moving through in the cycle. What I find is we see a lot of shame. We see a lot of not wanting to talk about, you know, the whole menstrual cycle and the importance of that. And what I find incredibly empowering about your work is that it draws that energy back. It restores and revitalizes the energy that the feminine has embedded and the codes that are within. So one of the things that I want to learn more about and that I want to ask about from your perspective is, we see a lot of women in modern day society that are disconnected from the feminine, of where the cycle is more of an annoyance and an inconvenience rather than a gift. So I would love for you to share more about how and why the menstrual cycle is a gift and how it can be utilized to activate the womb codes, how it can reclaim the rites of passage, how it can heal the lineage, and how it can unlock that sacred feminine power that is so readily available and desiring to come forward, should we choose to, or should the individual choose to go down that deeper pathway of self-discovery of, hey, this is happening to me. Let me befriend and let me have an intimate experience with this, because it is a part of me. It is me. It is my connection with source. It is my connection with Gaia. So that's the first part of it. I know that's a lot. The second part of it is, from the masculine perspective, how can we support the feminine in the menstrual cycle, in that remembering, in that activation, in that empowering, so that it allows for that union of the masculine and feminine to become so coherent, and to what I believe is the new paradigm of love is remembering the masculine and feminine energies that are woven intimately within us, that we're able to experience that with another human being and hold that as sacred, the sacred reciprocity of that. So how can the masculine support the feminine in this womb awakening?
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, wow. So, the time of menstruation, has obviously been so shamed, so heavily shamed. And you've got, say my sister-in-law is Indian, and she's not allowed in the temple when she's bleeding, when she's menstruating. It's seen as dirty, or that's what the narrative is. But essentially, a woman menstruating is in her most powerful part of her cycle. She had her psychic powers, her ability to attune to, receive wisdom from deep within her. The womb is that portal between the void, the cosmic womb, the death space, through into life. And menstrual blood is the only blood that is shed from the body without a wound. It holds the frequency of living light. Know that the stem cells are so rich in menstrual blood, but it is, there's so much taboo and disowning of this power, because that's not gonna sort of feather the nest of the patriarchal journey that we are just coming out of the hangover of. But so essentially, women living a more tribal existence would traditionally have stopped their duties for the camp during the time of their bleed, and they would have been bleeding together around the time of the new moon, and they would go into a moon lodge, and they would tend to self-care, and they would sit and bleed into the moss and into the earth, and sing and grieve and pray. And the elders would come to the women who were bleeding and ask them, where do we plant our crops? next season, where, what do we do with this sick child? Because she would be able to access that phenomenal cosmic realm and deep wisdom, and she had those living templates inside her body that she was able to access, particularly in this time of menstruation. And so obviously journey through the caterpillar, of where we are now, the goop, before we turn, we're in the chrysalis stage, before this, the butterfly evolution. But women there's a vast movement. It's almost like the divine feminine templates are anchored into the earth, and we are experiencing this greening, and then that is obviously bringing up all that is not love, all that is not resonant with this beautiful way and resonance and being. But ultimately, women who have denied this cycle, the power of the cycle, the power of rest and honoring their sacred temple, the sacred temple of their womb, and this sacred rest time, and that the deep cycle of that, the inner winter of that. Women have become so divorced from their bodies because there's been this push to, you are not useful to spend, a quarter of the month, every month, not producing, not, being out there, busy, yang, doing, production line. And so, yeah, I think there's this, the first level that needs to be cleared really is the shame, because we need to sort of go back to, obviously there's a birth story, but the story that where the impressions form and embed, and then the patterns initiate from, and those patterns inform your relationship to your body, your relationship to your sexuality, your relationship to fertility, your pregnancies, your births, your postpartum experience, and your menopause. They all are held in that container of menarche. So around the time of a woman's first bleed, this is the deep medicine that women need to reclaim first, because mostly women's experience is embarrassment, confusion, shame. And they weren't received, they weren't held, they weren't celebrated. There wasn't a rite of passage that they looked forward to, that they knew was coming, that they understood. So their experiences of it are mainly a deep disassociation from the body, a deep mistrust of the body, a deep shame, a need to hide it, a deep confusion. A lot of women experiences when they've never even told this story before, and yet when they tell it, they go back and they're like, so many of them didn't know what was happening. They thought they were dying. They thought they needed to hide it. They didn't want to tell anyone. They didn't, there's so many stories of that, John, and it's so, if that can be different for a woman, her relationship to her body sovereignty, her relationship to her sexuality, her relationship to her menstruation, her years as a cycling woman, can just completely and utterly be transformed. And so you can obviously go back in time and reweave that part of the journey, but it's really that's where the wound is most prevalent for women. And so, yeah, to heal that, to change that. And that's, I think, why you have so many women, why are women struggling now so much with menopause? Well, yes, there's so much more toxicity and they're expected to do way more. They haven't had this rest time and all this stuff. But ultimately, because that part of their life wasn't honored and held, and they didn't form a relationship with their rhythms, with their womb, with their body, with their sacred menstrual flow as a sacred experience. They're therefore divorced from their body. So they've got, like, however many years, a couple of decades at least, of bleeding and birthing and all the things in between, to then have to go back and reclaim and bring back into wholeness, because that has informed their mother years of, their cycling years. And that's a heck of a lot of stuff to reclaim, really, when it's something that you're experiencing every single month. It's almost like you're going right back to that wound. And so how can the masculine support the feminine and attune to her wisdom and her rhythms? Well, I think it's really good to know that in a sacred union, in a lovership, when a woman bleeds, it's almost like she's in her womb cave, she's in her red tent time, and her beloved is likely to actually be more in his full moon phase. He's likely to be feel more dynamic and have more energy. And there's this beautiful sort of balance that can go on in this weaving and dance of this energy. So then when she's ovulating and she's got more energy and is holding all the plates and, spinning all the plates and doing all the things, her beloved is more likely to be needing some cave time, some man cave time, and needing to slow down a bit and retreat. And so really, for a man to, if you're talking about a relationship where you've got a man and a woman and the woman's bleeding, for a man to be able to really encourage a woman to have some time out, go to her moon lodge and rest, especially on the first day of her bleed, the heavy day, or the day that feels the most intense for her in her cycle, to really just be able to cut the cords of the mundane and the to-do list and the external stuff, and to be able to go within. One, she's more likely to have a way better experience of menstruation, and it need not be painful. The pain is just their body saying, look, there's something here that needs addressing. People can go from painful periods to orgasmic periods, where they're just experiencing this phenomenal bliss state on the first day of their bleed, particularly, or just on that cusp as they're entering into the void of that journey. And I think for men to understand that when a woman has had her inner cave time and has been able to rest and restore, hibernate, honor her inner winter, and can feel therefore nourished and replenished from within, then she comes back out and she can be of service to the community, to the whole, to the relationship, all of that. But what happens if she doesn't do that, John, is she's more likely to get to that stage of the cycle, the inner autumn stage, where her body is wanting to be less social. Her creativity is like, I don't want to be out there doing the big thing. I need to kind of do more stuff that's solo creativity. Her emotions are more raw. She needs to be more boundaried. If she hasn't had that rest time, then the white hot dragon is more likely to come up, because she's at the end of her tether, and she's not resourced, ready to go into another cycle. And she hasn't been able to, just like if we were, quite simply, if we didn't sleep, if we didn't get the rest time of in the day-night cycle, if we didn't sleep, we'd be freaking wired and, explosive and all over the shop and completely irrational and all the things in between. And so I think for men to understand that, a woman really needs this, and to encourage that so that he can attune and pick up the threads of their life, so that to enable her to rest, and then know that his time will come when she's got more energy you know, there's a beautiful dance that can happen there for that. And I think really most women, they just want to feel heard. They just want to feel witnessed in their feeling, rather than having that external voice imprinted on them that, oh, they're menstruating and therefore they're going to be like this, and and this kind of like, I'm useless in this time of the month, or I'm a white hot dragon in this time of the month, or we can't have sex in this time of life, whatever the things are that, you know, might map out and sort of be the louder noise of what we've been used to hearing. I don't perform as well at that stage of the month. You know, all of that, if that can be really turned around, and for there to be that understanding of like, I am deeply serving the whole when I take this time for myself as sacred self-care. And then from that place of arrested, replenished, deeply resourced, access to my inner void, you know, deep wisdom within self, I can then be more in service to the whole and the community. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. There was quite a few things that you pointed out that really spoke to me. The sacred rest and the inner winter. Really, really beautifully spoken from an energetic standpoint of understanding that, not just rest, sacred rest, of deeply attuning to the inner wisdom of what's available, not, okay, I'm going to slow down, though feeling into the body and what's present and available and desiring to come forward and honoring that. Is that correct of what you're speaking to?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, and I think also part of it is when you can work with menstrual blood in a way that you can create a beautiful ritual around collecting your menstrual blood and offering it back to Gaia, offering it to Earth. There becomes, you know, the completion of that cycle is like, it goes back to the Earth. And that part of me is now complete, is composted. And even to ask in that rest time, if you're journaling, if you're, you know, meditating, what am I menstruating this month? What are the energetics? Because a woman's bleed, sometimes there's more clotting, sometimes there's a heavier bleed, sometimes it's shorter, longer, you know, there's all kinds of messages her body will be giving her, that when you learn to just go, instead of pathologizing it, oh, well, I need to take this pill, or I need to do that, or I need to, so what is your body telling you about the state of your well-being, your overall health, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional? And then you can actually tune into this question and go on this vision quest, you know, every bleed, like, what am I menstruating? What am I letting go of? And sometimes, John, you're letting go of something that is ancient, ancestral, or collective, and your bleed is honoring that.
Yeah, it's a
now
divination tool.
in this like chaos of you know, current circumstances, this war, you know, like, if we could use our menstrual bleed to be bleeding the grief charge out into the earth, and actually allow earth to receive that, there's deep magic that can be just accessed, I guess, for women to really feel their earth rootedness, to really feel their connection to earth, to really feel embodied, to really feel belonging in their own body, rather than, oh, there's that pain in the ass thing that happens once a month and I've got to do this, or plug up a time bomb, I'll take a pill, I'm, you know, so disassociated from that.
Yeah.
But to really see that there's deep medicine in that. And I still see girlfriends who like just hammering on, you know, I'm in summer, I'll keep going, I'll just da da da. And it gets, and if you're not addressing it, I feel like in menopause, this is the thing that just knocks louder and louder and louder on the door until you get the wake up of the sickness, the divorce, the car crash, whatever it is. It's like, it's got to shake you by your boots if you're not listening.
Yeah.
And it is part of your path to reclaim this gold. For some, it's not going to be part of their path. They're not going to get there. It's not going to be something that's on their horizons. But if this is part of your journey, it's going to come knocking for you.
It's going to show up.
It's going to show up. Yeah. And sorry, just to finish, I feel like that's how womb works. Just like I didn't have this is why I'm doing womb awakening. This is my story. It was, my story is more about, I guess, reclaiming the witch wound and reclaiming feminine power and the cyclical wisdom within, and reclaiming that and embodying that and being a vessel for the divine feminine through your earth rooted embodiment, through clearing, the channels, the stuck channels, the debris inside your body. And if you think of your soma, the somatic field of your body, it's like womb is HQ, she's like headquarters. So it's like, let's go right there and get her medicine. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because one of the things that really stuck out to me was having relationship to the rhythms as a sacred experience. Really tapping into that. What a gift it is, because as you know, like, I'm deeply embedded in the rhythms through sound and music. And when I'm hearing you share about the cycle, the rhythm, there's an innate sacred experience that is rhythmic, that when tuned into can be one of the most, if not the most transformative experience for a woman, because it is so intimate, because it is so personal, because, like you shared, there is the shedding of the inner and an expression that's coming out. And I forget, I was reading something last week about the nutrient density and what is available and how it was used when you were talking about ritual, is utilizing the bleed, in just how you said, is using it for plants, because it's essentially encoding our garden with the nutrients that we need for our own healing. So the nutrients that you're releasing, or the feminine is releasing, are now being repurposed back into earth. The plant life that we are eating, or that we are ingesting and taking in as food, is receiving the nutrients and the DNA coding from the bleed. So it's like this recycling of energies, and how powerful that is. So one of the things for me that you had shared is the moment of the first bleed. And the moment of the first bleed, it takes me back to my oldest child, and even my youngest child, my two girls. I have such a beautiful relationship with them, incredibly close. We talk about everything. However, with both of them, they both held that experience from me, not asking that, or not needing to be informed of that, because I know how intimate and how personal it can be, and especially sharing it with a parent or a father. Though I remember feeling that I was left out of that experience. I remember feeling knowing that it's going on, and feeling like I couldn't speak to it, because I didn't want to come from this space of embarrassing them. I didn't want to come from the space of, putting them on the spot in any way, or adding to the public shame that they might be experiencing from their friends. Either, oh, you got your period already, or for my daughters, or my oldest, oh, you got it that late, and it's so interesting, the human constructs that we come up with to influence others and how it can be so harmful. The moment of the first bleed, that really is landing so profoundly for me, because it's those first moments of experiencing that are so enveloped with information. We're so impressioned in that moment. We remember the feeling of that.
Yeah.
And in the body of work that I do with the emotion technique is going back to the first point of the wounding. And 99 times out of 100, I would even venture to say 100 times out of 100, it's not ours. That wounding is something from outside of us, or it is an attachment to an indoctrinated belief system that's not ours. So unwinding that is so powerful. And when you were talking about, the embarrassment, the confusion of not being received, of not being held, of not being celebrated, of not being honored for a rite of passage, and the deep disassociation from the body and wanting to hide it, that landed for me. Because all I ever wanted, especially for my oldest, of not having her mother around and no one here. And I'm not going to go into the personal things because it's not my story to share. Though the feelings that I felt coming from my oldest, the feelings of hiding, the feelings of shame, of wanting to be held, but perhaps not knowing how to ask for it, not having a mother figure to go to feel safe enough to go to. That topic of safety is so prevalent in our society right now for all the right reasons. And it happens at such impressionable times of our life. So when I hear you talk about your work and your journey with it, and not necessarily having, some of the traumas that lead women to the womb healing, as far as, miscarriage or sexual abuse, or, the myriad of storylines that can lead women to the work. However, what I hear more than anything else is this isn't just, this is for every woman to embody, right?
Yeah.
To feel into.
And John, essentially, the womb is not a place of fear and trauma. And yet, this is what most people hold in the templates of their womb, is an energetic soup of fear and trauma.
And that's where life is birthed from, and essentially giving birth to fear and trauma that hasn't been alchemized. Would you?
And it's more than even just giving birth to a physical form of a baby. We give birth to projects. The sacral chakra, the womb, is like this creative cauldron, and through the 9 portals of the womb, we understand that they're like, we can access, all dimensions and all bells and whistles of every aspect of humanity through the womb. And to access the womb, I mean, people who have done a lot of journeying with ayahuasca say it's like when you go into womb and you trip off through a womb portal, it's like, you don't need this medicine, from the plant medicine. You've got it from within inside you. You've got this wisdom from within inside you. But yeah, John, I just wanted to acknowledge you actually as a father, witnessing your daughters going through menarche and feeling like you couldn't reach them because you didn't want to you didn't want to fuck it up. You didn't want to put them in a spot where they're going to be, that was my memory. I was so embarrassed, all of that. And I think this is, as a society, this is where we can change those stories. Of course, we can go back in time, and I help women to reclaim the rite of passage of menarche in such a powerful way. But ultimately, if we can heal those for ourselves, so if the mother or the aunties, whoever's going to be holding, whoever's the female figure holding, the newer generation from really a tenderer age than just the time where their first bleed, but like towards that, from the age of 9, just holding her in ideally a sacred circle of girl circles, where she can explore the seasons, the rhythms, her emotions, all of that in a safe place with an auntie. But, sometimes just that gift that an older woman can give a daughter, but from a womb that's not traumatized herself. So a woman, a mother, an auntie has to do that work herself to be able to then, I guess, hold someone. And even for the patterns that she experienced, not to be passed down, because that is generally what happens. It's the same pattern, just gets passed down and down and down. And there's so much charge around, the womb, the journey with womb, through menstruation, through birth, through, all the things, the abuse, the miscarriages, the abortions, all of it. There's so much that, actually, you look into your ancestral thing and it's like, well, that was that. So it'd be interesting to understand what your girls' mother's experience was, and maybe there was a resonance there, for them, and maybe one day they'll be able to talk about it with you. But I'm sorry that got to be your experience. It was very beautiful for my daughter Willow to be able to, even though I wasn't in a place in my life where I had the girl circle. I was kind of heading towards that, and then I left that relationship and left that off-grid life, moved back home to Devon. But actually, Willow didn't get that girl circle that I'd been dreaming for her, but she had me. She used to kind of watch me dealing with my moon cup, and she'd, "Oh, Mum, some of your moon blood is on the floor." And she'd be like, it was just part and parcel. She never grew up in a home without altars and all this stuff going on. So she's highly attuned, but essentially to be able to celebrate her and talk about it and find ways, whether it was books that she, sometimes she didn't want to know. And just finding those ways or those gateways and portals where she would grab a book and we'd all sit there reading books on puberty, or, there are amazing tools and books out there now. There weren't, a few years back, there weren't so many. But to be able to normalize it, and she knew that when her first moon came, I would be celebrating her. And she knew that there was this little bundle of self-care goodies that she was going to get to kind of see what was in the box, kind of thing. And to really imprint on her, actually, that this is a time for self-care, and for her to receive that. And we've got a candle. So when she has her moon time, and she's only really recently started, so it hasn't been a regular thing, but to light the candle, so it's like her brother is aware of that, he's included in that, and he doesn't feel like I don't know what I'm alienated from it all. He's included in this, and he can be tender around that for her, for if I was bleeding, for me, or for his future partners or women in his life. But her experience was just that she felt safe. She felt celebrated. She went through all the feelings, literally she'd been at forest school all day and it had come. And she got in the car, she went, "Mom, I think I've started my period." But she was like, you could see she was in shock and denial. But I'm not sure I have. I don't think I have. And then it's the shock, I think, for any girl to suddenly see blood or a brown stain or whatever, you know that this is it. And it's like the shock is a big thing.
Yeah.
And then I saw her go through the emotions of like denial. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And then she got really angry. Ah, I don't want this. Ah. And then she got really upset. Oh, it's awful, Mummy. I don't like it. It's all this. And then she came round to, the celebration with the self-care goodies. And she was like, oh, this is just the best thing. She just thought it was wonderful. So because of that holding that I'd been able to give her, and for goodness sake, I'm a womb shaman. So it was not like, she wasn't going to get that. But she was then able to speak to her dad, who, is so divorced from the feeling body and the feminine cycles and all of that stuff. But she was able to pick up the phone, Dad, I started my moon time, whatever she said. And he was able to buy her a necklace and just, celebrate her in her own way. So no matter what happens, I know that there was something that we got a bit right there, so that she can develop that relationship to her body, her cycles. But yeah, we need to be doing this for future generations. We need to be doing this now. We need to be making amends by healing and clearing up our own stories, and then really sort of initiating our daughters. Because we all came through a womb to be able to be an incarnate being on this planet. And if the state of the womb that you came through was a traumatized womb, that's going to have a very big imprint on your trauma codes, your wounding codes. Whereas if you came through a pristine womb, there was a clear channel of pristine radiance, that's a very different conception code. That's a very different birthing code. And that's the dream, I think, for the new earth to hold a generation of people born through, a conscious womb experience.
Yeah.
Imagine a world.
Absolutely. And that, everything that you shared is so important for us to have that connection, to have that deeper awareness, to understand the dynamics of the cycle and the connection to it and the sacred self-care that is available. And, it's one thing for the feminine to restore and to really revitalize that connection within and throughout. And, when you were speaking, and I could see, for so many women, like you were, talking about being, divorced from their bodies. And then for a lot not having or feeling safe to be able to communicate or to be able to share that experience. And then really the kicker of it all is not having the support from the masculine, or a feeling, oh, it's that time of month again, or, condescending or really shaming. Being dismissed, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and you spoke to another thing of not being productive during that period of time, and one of the ways that we can support, and when I speak to the masculine, I'm also speaking to the masculine energetic, because it could be, it could be either gender, especially in the workplace, of where, oh, you're not productive, you're not getting your job done. Well, shit. Do you know what I'm going through right now? Like, can you have, some compassion? So understanding the dance of the energies between the masculine and the feminine, I feel is incredibly crucial to that. And thank you for the insight and, the offering of how the masculine can support, is encouraging that deeper rest, to support going within and restoring, because on that backside, like you shared, is being more vibrant, coming out of that, being more alive and feeling held in that period. And I definitely, I understand that and feel into that, of what that is like to be held in in those spaces, or to hold another in those spaces, so that they have the opportunity to do that sacred self-care, to be able to feel in, because it's really honoring that intuitive connection that is so readily available and prominent within the feminine dynamic. And from listening to you, I'm gaining a greater awareness of how I can amplify that for others, of how I can support my own daughters. And a lot of the things that you have shared have dropped me in to be able to facilitate a conversation in a way that is going to allow me to bring this up in a less invasive way than I'm, not that I'm invasive in any way. I'm very mindful of the way that I communicate things, to a point of sometimes I necessarily don't communicate it until I have the languaging to go around it, and you've really provided that for me. So I really appreciate that from the depths of my heart, and I know that that's going to translate, with my daughter's experience as well.
And John, even just as you're speaking, I just had this little voice pop in and just say, well, tell John that, to be able to maybe find a gift that felt fitting that you could give them now, and say, I realize I didn't honor that for you at the time because I didn't know how, and I didn't want to embarrass you, but I would love to be able to honor that for you now, for your little girl, or however, I don't know how old they are, but, to be able, I'd love to honor that for you. And so this is for you for that time, with all my love. And I want you to know that I really know that's a sacred time and a special time. And you were so brave, and you did it without a mother figure there. And I was doing my very best, but I probably fucked it up.
Yeah.
Just because I wasn't, just because it's a big thing, and I didn't know how.
Yeah.
I think just for the feminine to be able to hear that, to be able to hear the masculine say, I don't have the maps and I can't access what you're feeling, but I want you to know that I'm here holding you and protecting you and loving you no matter what. It's like then the feminine can just soften and deeply surrender to who and what she needs to be and how she needs to flow. And from that sort of deep rest and that deep sense of safety that the feminine can feel when the banks of the river are intact and the river can flow, then the juiciness and the wild feminine can, dance and weave and play, and the masculine's like, wow, this is fun. It's really sort of understanding that dance, I think, is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for giving the languaging to that, and that offering of a gift to celebrate, because that's definitely something that, especially for my oldest, of not having, with my youngest, I completely surrendered to her having that experience with her mom. I just, personally, I felt left out in the way of that. I didn't even know for a while. Like, I didn't know for a while, and that I didn't take personally, not at all. Didn't take it personally at all, because I was very grateful that she had a mother there to be able to share that experience with. What I did receive from that was just how fucked up our society is, that she doesn't feel comfortable of being able to come to me, because she shared things with me first before anybody else. So it's not like,
no, okay. Wow.
You know what I mean? So it's not like it was, I don't want to tell my dad this. I'm fully aware that it was like, I want to share this experience with my mom, though we have talked about it recently, of where she was sharing that, oh, it's just kind of weird to share it with my dad. And I get that from, and I honor that, and I'm not going to shame her for that, or be like, oh, you should tell me, you should feel definitely not that at all, because I know it's a societal thing of where, our society has, imprinted and indoctrinated our belief system that these are things that are, not to be shared, or that are to be,
not to be celebrated. I
not to
mean,
be
hell, isn't it
celebrated.
an amazing thing to go, there's a fertile, beautiful woman in the making.
Right.
And
Right.
she's got this blessing of her moon time that's going to be visiting her, once a month, and precipitating this beautiful evolution of her,
Yeah.
into her beauty codes.
Yeah.
You need to celebrate this, not
Yeah.
just
And that's,
can I tell you about it, but let's celebrate this, so it could be that, she's taken out for a lovely meal, a tea, had a rose placed on her pillow. It could be just some small gesture, someone might want the big celebration. I know, around where I live, there's a little kind of tradition of making a beautiful quilt. So women will get together with a piece for the quilt, and they'll make a quilt, and then that's given to the girl who's just started her bleed time. And there are so many different things that you can do to honor it, but I think if that could become more commonplace, that a girl grows up expecting that this is something that's going to happen, and then she becomes a young woman and she feels a pride in that, and she feels celebrated, even though the emotions and the feelings that she gets when it actually happens might be shock and denial and anger and tears, and then whatever. Ultimately, to be held by a positive, rather than, oh, welcome to the whatever that is the imprint, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. Yeah.
yeah. And then along with that too, and into what you were speaking of before, is then actually having the awareness and the understanding of the dynamics of the energies that are showing up, and knowing that this is available and that I can support it, and the evolution of the cyclic unfolding, and knowing, okay, this is the time for cocoon. This is the time for, the coming alive, or this is the in-between time, understanding more of that, so that I can hold those spaces and have a greater awareness, so that I'm also not disconnected from that as well. So that, that
And there's a whole, John, there's a whole, map really that charts its way through the seasons
mm,
as we take this template, from the lunar cycle of the dark moon, which is akin to the nighttime and the inner winter, through the new moon, and then the waxing moon, which is that, the springtime, and the morning, and the inner maiden, and then you've got the and pre-ovulation, as it were, and then you've got the summer, the ovulation, the midday, the zenith of the day, and then the autumn, the waning moon. It's easier to do it at the diagram, but so I had an artist create a beautiful map of this inner seasons of the menstrual cycle, and when I showed that to my sister-in-law, friends, who are not on this womb awakening, train in any way, they were just like, oh. And then they showed it, like she showed it to my brother, and he was like, and explained it, the nuances of, I'm not the same woman on day 1 as I am on day 11, and I'm not the same woman as I am on day 11 as I am on day 18. And to actually see it as a seasonal map, and to understand that, and to really have deep empathy for that and those rhythms, and honor for, wow, she's in her inner spring and she's feeling carefree. She can take a risk. She can go planning. She get her diary out. She's ready to, do the thing. She's got the energy. Is very different from, I'm going to get really pissed off if you do that thing because I need to do, it's hormones and it's rhythms, and they need to be honored. They needed to be honored because there's this deep phenomenal thing going on in her body that's needing everything to happen at this stage and not happen at that stage, and It's like it comes with feelings and libido and creativity and moods, and I want to wear this, or I want to exercise in this way. It's like we're all the things, and we're maybe known for changing our mind, but maybe it's just that our hormones are changing, and what we wanted yesterday or 5 days ago is a completely different thing now, today. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And it draws for me, from my perspective, when you're sharing these things, it also draws a deeper layer of intimacy, right? It draws me to want to understand more about how my partner, how my daughter, or how my mother, or anybody, instead of not bringing the conversation to the table, when we bring the conversation to the table and dispel the taboo and really normalize the communication that's wrapped around it, we can have a greater level of intimacy there, which allows us to have stronger bonds, more improved relationships. And as you were speaking, of feeling celebrated, of feeling honored, of feeling seen, of feeling heard, of feeling valued and respected, for who we are at the deepest, at the deepest layers of ourself that are wanting to come through. And what a shift. Like, there was one thing that you had shared, that shifting the relationship to the self, we can reweave our experience. We can remap essentially our coding to become fully online, fully activated, repurposed, recharged, revitalized, and remember who we are at the very core of our experience. So thank you for sharing. And I'm saying a lot of these things out loud, and I'm learning as I go. And I really appreciate you sharing more and more, especially upon my reflections, so that I can, internalize this and not just intellectualize it, but to embody it and to integrate the understanding, so that sacred reciprocity can be valued and honored in the exchange with the feminine.
And imagine, John, if we had the knowing, so that almost like brushing your teeth, what stage of the menstrual cycle you are, not just because you've got an app, but because you feel it in your body. Know what stage you are. I'm in my inner spring. I'm in my inner summer. I'm in my inner autumn. When you're bleeding because you're bleeding, but those other nuances that hold such different flavors and rhythms within them. If there was a knowing of that, each woman was empowered in her knowing of herself as a cyclical being, as a rhythmical, cyclical, seasonal being. And then she can find the language, and there's a holding for her, so that when she is journeying through this cycle each month, imagine a life where, almost like, for breakfast, she announces herself, I'm in my inner spring. And then, like, so imagine, I'm just thinking as you're talking, like, imagine if that was just became such a thing, or there was a chart on the fridge and she could just turn it, and so everyone would know, where she was. And when you hold a red tent or a women's circle, people will introduce themselves, or you invite people to pick up the ovary stones or the talking stick and share, I'm XYZ, and name themselves, and I'm in my inner spring. They will name where they are. And as a facilitator, you're then able to, and I do this with the yoga class even, it's like you're able to then feel the pulse. I mean, you're probably feeling it anyway, but it's sort of validating to just go, okay, there's, out of 10 women, there are 4 who are menstruating right now. They're in their inner winter. And that's going to have a very different feel for the vibe than if you had, 8 of them in spring and summer. Do you know what I mean? So, or if they're like 7 they're in autumn and they're ready to release and they're not quite there yet. Imagine if we could really sort of have those sort of dialogues in the office of like, right, we've got this meeting here, but let's just check in. Where are you energetically? And even a man could say, I feel like I'm in my inner spring. I've got my inner summer going on. I've got my inner winter, to just actually feel the pulse of where you are energetically and have the language for that, and then an honoring, and then to have a read of that, to be able to just go, okay, we're not going to be that productive today because, so we're going to do it this way, and to accommodate that and to weave with the feminine energetics of, this is what's landing. Let's now do this, instead of the plan and the map and the linear thing that the masculine's so good at.
Yeah, drawing a closer connection with our body, which is something that we could all benefit from, is really just feeling in, like you were saying, to that creative impulse that is so accessible and available to all of us if we give ourselves permission to experience it, to listen a little bit deeper, to feel, to drop out of our headspace, to slow down just enough to feel the frequency shift. Our nervous system will inform us, right? So yeah, thank you so much for that. It's really, really nourishing information for all of us to be able to receive what you're sharing. And we could go several more hours on this. And I have more questions based upon things that you have shared, though I feel like we're gonna save those for another time, because I do want to go into the mapping of it, a deep dive into the mapping. And I also would like to learn more about how you are carrying forward your work and what you see as the evolution of it. So I would love to be able to to share another conversation with you for those, because I think that'll probably be about another 2 hours. What I would like to bring light to is you spoke of the codes, and it's essentially what brought us together. Was there was an activation that came through during the Lionsgate portal and the Queen Code. Do you want to speak to that and what that process was like, what it means? And for the listeners out there, Vaishnavi, who was in the prior podcast, and I had co-created a song, or a transmission, if you will, entitled Abun, for Debs and her quantum womb healing in the Queen Code. And I'm going to allow Debs to kind of share more about that and the codes, what they mean, and what this one in particular speaks to.
Yeah. God, we couldn't finish without talking about this one, John. It was so juicy. It really was. My God. I'm still feeling the activations of it, actually. Okay, so in the sort of the maps that I studied with womb awakening, you have this ancient feminine medicine wheel within the womb that holds the 4 elements, and then the cosmic womb is in the center. And then there's this royal road up towards the womb that maps from the yoni lips, the clitoris, the G-spot, and the cervix. The cervix is like the gatekeeper of the womb, into the womb. And each of these zones is like a gateway, a portal, including the elemental ones inside the womb. And as I'd studied it, there were 8. So it was maiden, mother, crone. And then you went into the womb, and it was earth at the base of the womb. I'm not going to go into full details, but yeah, earth at the base of the womb, fire in the right ovary, air at the top of the womb, and water in the left ovary, and then the cosmic womb in the center. So 8 portals. And with the apprenticeship that I run, which is like a Celtic feminine mystery school called Womb Awakening 4 Seasons Apprenticeship, we journey with, and I have mapped the 4, it's almost like the timelines of womanhood through maiden, mother, queen, and crone, and this cyclical journey through the seasons, through the menstrual cycle, through the lunar phase, your inner maiden, your inner mother, queen, crone, onto the Celtic wheel. And so we use two of the Celtic festivals for each archetype. So say in spring, we're journeying with Imbolc through Ostara, and we're journeying with, in that season, if you like, through Maiden. So we're reclaiming in Imbolc your own birth codes, and then in Ostara, at the sort of height of your maiden years, we're reclaiming your Menarche. So we were journeying through the year, and we'd done Maiden, tick, we'd done Mother, tick, and we landed in Queen. And we're using this sort of cyclical, Celtic wheel seasonal map. But there's also this womb map that was Maiden, Mother, Crone. And we got to Queen, and I was telling them the sacred sound I'd love you to chant in one of your, womb shaman practices is a womb. And I was explaining to them what it meant. And it was literally on the eve of Lionsgate. So it was on the 7th of the 8th. And a couple of them were like, but Debs, where's the Queen in this womb map that you've given us, that I'd had this artist create? And I was like, well, it's just made of Mother Crone, I'm afraid. And that's what that's what I was given. And I didn't think it was possible to tear up the map, tear up the rule book and change it. Anyway, we did, basically, long and short of it. And it came through as such a wild, phenomenal activation that ultimately what we've been given in these ancient maps of Maiden, Mother, Crone is this total annihilation and rejection of the Queen. And if you think of someone like Mary Magdalene, who has been demonized, it's like she holds the Queen codes, because ultimately she was this phenomenal priestess, this woman. Whether you're religious or not, we're just talking about her as a being who held some codes here. And she was written out of history. She was like, you're the prostitute, you're the whore. And in a way, this is what has happened with the feminine. So the Queen is the stage, in terms of the menstrual maps, it's the stage where you are, where you've come through ovulation and you're moving towards your bleed time. It's actually the longest time. It's the luteal phase. And it's the time where people are like, oh, she's this, oh, she's that, because you haven't got the tolerance. You're not going to put up with that shit. You've got that, I take no shit, inner she-wolf boundaries and stuff. And so she gets demonized. Yeah, we don't want to know about her, because she's not, you don't want her in the around the table when you're trying to have the smooth talking conversations. She's not going to take any of that bullshit. So she gets demonized. And then if you think about it, the Queen really, she represents the queendom, women and their bodies, body sovereignty. She represents women in their autonomy, in their authority, women as leaders, women who are utterly in their power, but not in the power off with their heads, cold-hearted, ice queeny, ruthlessy queen energy that we've kind of, had a bucket load of. She's this beautiful Queen who is soft and feminine and magnetic and alluring, but she's also deeply courageous and strong. There's a grace, there's a beauty, there's a magnetism there. And she's missing. Who are our icons that we can go? She holds that. And she's not holding the code of, I'm owning my sexuality through this distorted lens, come and get some pussy here. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about sacred sexuality. We're talking about her absolutely owning her body sovereignty, being able to step into leadership. And specifically, I think this is where it was so beautiful that you and Vaishnavi wove together. It was about bringing online, it is safe for me to be in my feminine magic right now and take up space and have and share the gifts of my feminine voice. And it's like this archetypal queen has been so subjugated, so distorted. It's like when she's in her wild feminine essence, John, it's like she holds these codes that are so powerful and so empowering for women. But this particular frequency is the frequency that the distorted masculine has wanted to own and destroy and, just annihilate ultimately, and own and control. And so the reclamation of this queen, it feels like this really being in the queen stage of my life, being post, well, it's obviously perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, but this is where I'm at. And I feel like this gold is just like, it was definitely a co-creation. It was like these codes have been there forever, these celestial codes, but where we've been at, there hasn't been a space at the table for the queen in this light. And through this portal of Lion's Gate, we started to midwife her through. And it was phenomenally exciting. And we put her back on the map. We found a portal for her in the Yoni maps. We found a place for her, a sound for her, an animal totem for her, a crystal for her. It's like she fully got inaugurated on her throne, on her rightful throne. And I feel like this is it. If women, and often it's the journey of menopause when their consciousness suddenly just elevates and, something really big starts to shift around for them when they're not in the trenches of baby making or baby tending or baby rearing, all that stuff. Ultimately, this is such a big piece that has been missing from the jigsaw. And so to bring this powerfully in this portal and to then get the artist to reweave the map. And then next year, as the apprenticeship runs again, I've got to go back and do all the audios and put in the 9th sacred portal of the womb. It's like, it's we are coming home to ourselves, and there is a throne and a crown that's waiting for you. And we're not on that thing of like, you love women to rise until they rise and then you want to tear them down. This is, let's celebrate each woman owning her throne, and her throne is different from yours and her crown is different from yours, but we each have a throne and a crown. And to be able to sit there in our authority and take up space and express our feminine voice and share our gifts. This is magic. So to have that phenomenal piece of, deep, deep healing and activation that you and Vaishnavi wove together has been like the icing on the cake and the cake. It's been truly amazing. And I've played that track in the quantum womb healing one-to-ones that I do for people in the group container, and people have had the most phenomenal clearings, healings, activations, transformations that have come from that and from listening to that track and your journey through that and Vaishnavi's journey through that. It was like, this was something very, very powerful.
Yeah, the experience of working with Vaishnavi in that sacred dance, of co-creating something that I felt such a deep reverence for within my own work of honoring and holding the divine feminine, of being a torchbearer for the sacred masculine, and being asked to participate in bringing this alive was such an honoring for me, to feel into that, especially during the Lionsgate portal, and everything that you spoke to. There was just this charge in the field, and it gave birth to itself. It's as if Source was sitting in my lap and took my hands, and I was an instrument of source as this was coming through. And every step of the process was so organic. There was times where I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just listening and creating and trusting, a whole lot of trust, because I did have my mental faculties coming in, my self-doubts. Who am I, to be bringing this forward? And then I just sat in the remembering of what I'm here of service to. And I shared this, I believe, with you and Vaishnavi and Katie, is the vision of what I held as I was drawing forth the initial framework and the foundation of the track was just providing the ocean floor. I'm going to provide the structure and the framework so the feminine can dance within that and be the creatrix and bring forth the code of whatever is desiring to come through in that crucible of creative expression. And it was an activation for me, for sure, of my own creative gifts, a remembering of my own personal power, of why I am here and what I am giving birth to in a different capacity, right? Obviously, I don't have the same mechanisms to birth. However, I am able to birth an idea into fruition. I am able to tap into the creative consciousness and the infinite intelligence, and to draw from that, receive a download, and then go through my own processing of birthing that into existence. So honoring my own feminine nature in that which I have been blessed to be raised by a mother. I raised my own daughter for the first, pretty much her entire life. I've had sole parental custody since she was a year and a half. So a very close connection with the feminine and protecting and preserving that and being of service to it. So it was an honoring at a very particular time to be able to participate in that. And I'm really grateful for you offering that and for allowing me to be of service to your work, to your life's calling, to your gifts, and to co-create and to weave that into existence. And at the end of this podcast, we're going to play that. One of my best friends, my brother, actually, my brother from the same universal mother, not my biological brother, my brother that has been with me through thick and thin and has witnessed my life from several different perspectives of it. I shared with him the recording, and what happened for him was so profound. So I want to share some of his comments about this piece, because it's, when we talk about masculine and feminine energetics, or we talk about the womb, for me, from the masculine perspective, is to break down the positioning of male and female, and to remember that the masculine and feminine is within all of us. It's within everything. We live in a world of polarity, and within that polarity is a spectrum that is all one. And if we cut off our connection to the feminine, we're essentially cutting ourselves off from a very important part of our human experience, just as from the feminine perspective of cutting off the masculine is a disservice to humanity and what we are evolving to in our conscious evolutionary process. So for him to share this really touched my heart, because I know that it was received. And I do want to share that Jay and I, have a history together, though some of the ways that we navigate this life, we have a shared vision. Though when it comes to the languaging around some of our individual practices, it's not like we are deeply enmeshed in each other's practice. We have a harmonic resonance that weaves our paths together, of where we see each other, we honor and value each other. So when he shared this, I felt seen. I felt met. I felt the feminine being met and seen. And I felt the ripple effects of the magic of this project coming alive. So he shared the concept of the Garden of Eden and being an internal paradise is so powerful. This is what he spoke to in terms of Vaishnavi and I's podcast. And he said, oh, and you two make such beautiful music together. And to be more specific, Abun is literally medicine for my soul. It's what music should strive to be, a mystical, spiritual experience from a magical collaboration. So without the understanding or potentially the knowing of what quantum womb healing is, of what womb awakening is, still being able to tap into the magic, to the potency, to the medicine. And he shared with me that he listens to it often as a meditation to feel into uncovering more aspects of himself, which is essentially what you were speaking to, is ushering in the new paradigm of learning from beyond the beyond of what's desiring to come through us in the times that we are in, so we can have this quantum healing that is so present and available. So I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share that with everybody, that this isn't a singular experience. This is a collective experience for us to come fully alive in a very important time for us to consciously evolve into this new template that is being birthed into existence. So thank you so much, Debs, for being a steward of this, being a proponent of this, for being an active participant in what we are building in this new earth template. And with that being said, before we close out, I ask a question to all of my guests. And that question is how do you believe that we can be or co-create a more sustainable and harmonious experience for all in creation? Essentially, how can we be better together?
I feel like this question just really speaks to where we started, actually, with a desire to come home to yourself, and to cut through the veils of conditioning, patterns, external, noise, internal traumas, a desire to, even if this isn't the language that you might use, a desire to embody sacred union, the sacred union between the masculine and the feminine within you. I think that's it. Yeah.
Yes to that. Wow. About as clear, concise, and succinct of a message for humanity. Not to intellectualize it or to expand on it, though, for just to share for anybody out there that is wrapping your minds around this, is we seek completion outside of ourselves. In the society that we are living in, we're seeking for answers everywhere outside of us. We seek a partner. We long for that love. There's gazillion amounts of dating sites. Love is being sold everywhere. And what Deb so beautifully spoke to is that when we remember that inner union, that sacred union that exists within all of us, coming home to ourself, coming home to love. How powerful that expression can be, and how transformative it will be, and is for our human experience. It's happening.
It's happening.
And we're doing it.
We are doing it. Yeah. Each of us in our own unique, beautiful way. We're all holding our threads in this big tapestry.
Thank you for weaving your thread. And thank you for sharing this time and space with us to be able to expand about a topic that so many I know are curious about, that may be shrouded in mystery, and rightfully so. Though I also feel that it's time to peel back the layers of that mystery and normalize this conversation so that there is a comfortability, that there is a deeper presencing within the feminine of acknowledging and saying yes and embodying that wisdom of the womb. So important, and is a part of the new template that you have shared. So thank you for that. There's a lot of things that you have spoken to that I would like to expand on, as I'm sure there's quite a few topics that we have talked about that our listeners are curious of learning more about. You have several programs and offerings. You have one-on-ones, you have group programs, you have a year-long program that are all being offered to deepen into this. Where are places online or anywhere that our listeners can find you, that I'm going to make sure I put into the show notes so our listeners can have a deeper awareness and understanding, and also experience this with you? Because I know there's going to be some women out there that want to explore this, that their sacred yes is fully charged right now. They've probably already jumped on your website and cut off half the podcast. They're like, yes, this is what I want right here, right now. Let's go. So can you share where we can find you?
Yeah, John. So my website is devapathways.com, DEVA pathways.com. And Deva is an ancient Sanskrit word, but it also speaks to the Deva elementals of nature. So yeah, devapathways.com. And I mostly avoid social media except Instagram. So I'm on Instagram as also Deva Pathways, at Deva Pathways. And yeah, that's mostly it. I run every 6 weeks when we're traversing through a portal of the Celtic wheel. I hold free womb activations via Zoom, and they are very powerful. So we kind of give a bit of context. It's themed around one of the, rites of passage of womanhood. So it'll be themed around maiden, mother, queen, or crone, depending on where we are in the year. The next one coming up actually in towards Yule, towards the winter solstice, is around womb loss. So anything that's in your coding or your ancestral coding around womb loss, baby loss, hysterectomy, miscarriage, loss of innocence, anything that resonates with that. So we're going to be holding a free womb activation around that. And then with the Womb Awakening apprenticeship container, the 4 Seasons container, we meet as a council of womb shamans, and we do a deep dive with those codes, taking that activation deeper. And we do on the solstice and equinoxes, we do a fire ceremony. And on the cross quarters, so Beltane, Imbolc, Lammas, Samhain, We do the earth festivals. We do a womb Ho'oponopono. It's more of a yin ceremony, and we record that, and then you can purchase that. That's a very beautiful way to sort of get some of this juice and activation in your life. And I feel passionately, actually, really, John, that just, you know, ultimately your womb will guide you. So you don't need to use your head. The people who find this container, and there are women who they would never have thought of it, and they're knee deep in it and loving it. And there are women who are yoni steam practitioners or womb astrologers, and you know, but the activation is very strong and very powerful and supercharged in the container, and people are really stepping into their sacred feminine awakening and sacred feminine leadership codes. So yeah, we're holding that, and then from that, the birthings of these free womb activations that are dotted throughout the year, throughout the Celtic wheel, are really gorgeous to hold. I love holding those. So you get a bit of context, and then I guide you into your womb, and you receive a healing transmission.
Mm.
You access the voice of your womb, the wisdom of your womb. We treat her almost like an oracle. It's like you'd be able to go in and see what she has to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to honor you, John, actually, really, when you were just leading into this part, I mostly speak and connect with and, you know, hold space for women. And so it's been actually very, very beautiful to connect with you and have this dialogue with you as a man who holds a torch for the sacred feminine within yourself and allows that for other women. And as you said, you laid that ocean bed, you know, in such a beautiful, beautiful way, in such an honoring, strong, such a beautiful way of the sacred masculine, as an embodiment of the sacred masculine, for Vaishnavi to be able to weave her magic on top. And as you're doing now, for me to be able to share my magic into your space here, but really want to honor you as someone who holds that thread. We call them Grail Knights. Those who are holding, you know, that beautiful lineage thread to be able to help birth this new earth by unplugging from the chaos and the war zone of where the masculine has got so skewed.
Thank you. Fully receive that. I definitely find myself a little bit more in a cerebral space during our conversation because of how important this is. And I want the listeners, you know, you're probably hearing me sound a little bit different in this conversation than others because, you know, maybe a little bit more serious or a little bit more, you know, dropped in. And I want to share the why behind that. And it goes to what Debs was just sharing. There's a sacred responsibility that each of us have to honor the other, we'll say. And it's the other me. It's the other aspect of me. So let's say I identify as the masculine. There is the sacred reciprocity that is available to us of when we take a moment to listen, to receive, to honor, to witness, to observe, to feel the full spectrum of that experience and the information that's available. In sound, we call it a sound envelope. And within that envelope, there is a vast array of information that essentially creates the song. And I really appreciate what you were speaking to in the holding of that space and providing the ocean floor and acknowledging that it's taken, you know, years to and continues to evolve of how I can be more of service and to have a greater awareness, especially for my son, you know, and especially for other men that I work with out there that, you know, they're at a different stage of learning. And perhaps they may not have had other men in their life to hold that torch or to be the Grail Knight, as you've spoken to. And this is something that that I don't take lightly. So, if this conversation, you're listening to it and you're like, wow, you're a little bit more, serious, or speaking, from a different tone, it's very intentional, because this is a conversation that is so integral to our success as a species. Because when we integrate the feminine and the masculine dynamics and honor them both to be sacred within, we experience that throughout. That is essentially what Reverberations is about, what Amplify Your Love is about, what this show is to send the vibrational frequency of what we are desiring to co-create in the more sustainable and harmonious experience of this life, to echolocate that out into the ethers and to draw it back to us so that we are able to be the living evidence of that. So I know that was a whole lot of verbiage around a thank you. And I deeply, deeply receive everything that you had shared. And thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your service, and all of the mapping that you had laid out of the womb and what all of that entails from an energetic perspective, so that we can learn and embody and integrate that into our experience, because it is so important for us, even if there is just a small part of it that we grasp right now. We are doing a massive service to humanity, because it all starts with just saying yes, or receiving, or acknowledging. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And once again, to all of our listeners, if there is any part of this show that has resonated with you, is to acknowledge that part of yourself and to lean in to this body of work. And you can tune in with that at devapathways.com and reach out to Debs and inquire about how this body of work can serve you in your human experience, and activate the deeper layers of healing and your soul's yes, and remember who you are at the very core of your being. Because just in knowing, Debs, and having these type of conversations, it is having a profound impact on me and those that are around me. And may this also be of service to you and those around you. Debs, is there anything that you would like to close out with?
I'm looking forward to listening back and hearing a wound at the end. I feel like that's the close that we need. And yeah, just if this has touched you, there's a free masterclass, if you like, a womb activation that's a little bit more sort of lifting off the page the maps and the resonance of each of these 9 sacred portals of the womb, of which we'll be going into the Queen as well. And that's on the Friday, I think it's the 27th of November. So that's coming up quite soon if you listen to this before then. And then the womb ship sets sail in end of January for the apprenticeship. So if that is something that you want to find out a little bit more about, you can hop on a Shakti call and I'd be happy to connect with you. Yeah, you can apply to come and join us. It'd be a beautiful honor and privilege. Thank you, John, so much.
You're welcome. And thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Thank you to everybody listening to this, and share this with someone that you might feel that would be able to gain a little bit greater understanding, or someone that might be in the struggle, or someone that might be in the field of shame, and share this as a gift. So thank you all. I love you deeply. And remember, we are better together. Stay tuned for Abun.